Writer's Corner is made possible thanks to the following sponsors. Jaime's Haberdashery of St. Paul has become an anchor of the downtown business community. A modern store with classic decor, it provides everything in clothing, both custom and tailored, plus offers a huge selection for both men and women. There is now also a Jaime's in Red Wing. Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forums. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with his authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome. We're back with Writer's Corner, a different Writer's Corner today. I'm Alan Miller, and actually, one of the things I am is a writer. I have a problem here with a microphone, but
you know, you have to dress that way to look like a contemporary writer.
We usually have a couple of writers talking about their craft. Today is something different. The scheduled writer had to cancel, and I thought, what better could we do than bring in somebody who has written hundreds of opinions and articles, is working on 2 books and dozens of articles. Honorable Paul Anderson, retired of the Minnesota Supreme Court, to talk about something that is a threat to our democracy. We have threats going on in the world all over right now, if you follow the news, even if you don't follow the news. But we have threats right here, and one of the biggest threats we have is censorship and book banning, and nobody better to talk about it than Paul Anderson. Welcome.
Before we get into today's topic, you're going to have to invite me back when I get further along with at least one of the books I'm writing. It's about the 1990 governor's race, which is one of the most unique and unusual in Minnesota history, and it's quite an interesting story. So you're going to have me back sometime with my co-author, and we're going to talk about the writing process.
Well, that's what we do once a month here. We bring in writers, and I try not to talk. And
that's
talk.
Hard, isn't it?
For me, it's very hard. But today, it's a little bit different. Today, we're going to talk about book banning and the threat that it and censorship really are imposing on our democracy. Your thoughts about that?
Well, it's dangerous, exceedingly dangerous to a civil democracy like our own. And you can understand where it comes from and the people that are behind it, but most of the people who push for book banning, the books that they want to ban are about something that is, they see as a threat or something that's different, or something that they know about and are trying to repress. And so this is one of the ways they express it. And this is going to be a little dicey as I say that, but my mother always used to tell me, he said, Paul, be careful when you point your finger at somebody, because you got 3 fingers in your hand pointing back at you. And so these people are wanting to ban books about various topics. They got to be aware that those of us to see what they're doing realize there are 3 fingers pointing right back at them.
We're going to talk about some of those. You know, I've been a writer for years in various forms, including when I was practicing law, a lot of briefs. But it's of late that I have joined PEN America and the Authors Guild, which are both writers' organizations that are activist organizations, both very active in fighting book banning. And for instance, some of the books, and the statistics are really scary. We had 21 states that banned 1,648 different titles last year in 2022. 73%.
Do they ban the Bible?
They don't ban the Bible.
But there's a lot of racy stuff, especially the Old Testament. So shouldn't they, if they're going to be consistent and not hypocritical, want to ban the Bible too?
You would think. And they also don't seem to ban books of violence. That doesn't seem to bother people. And some of the books out there are really, really books of just abject violence. But those are not, I'll tell you the kind of books that they ban. And 73% of the requests to ban books come from a few right-wing advocacy groups. And that most of them were formed in 2021. And they're acolytes, unfortunately, of the Republican Party in many instances. And I don't want this to be political, but it is a right-wing fringe, such as the misnamed Moms for Liberty. And they're just front organizations to take our learning and take our knowledge and compress it to what they see. Here are some of the books, including Pulitzer Prize winners like To Kill a Mockingbird.
What, To Kill a Mockingbird?
Lord of the Flies, Genderqueer.
Well, wait a second. I can understand To Kill a Mockingbird because Atticus Finch was a pseudo-liberal in the South and promoted segregation racism. So I suppose that they don't like that Atticus Finch was a pro-segregation racist proponent. Is that why?
That's one. Brave New World, Lolita, Little House on the Prairie, Mark Twain, really controversial book. Huh? Charlotte's
Twain
Web.
is controversial. He was controversial when he was writing.
Out of Darkness, which is a young young author's romance story about a Mexican-American girl who gets into a relationship with an African-American boy. Well, certainly that's one of the ones that got banned. The Color Purple, Ulysses, Animal Farm, The Kite Runner, 1984.
Well,
this book is gay. Grapes of Wrath, The Invisible Man, Of Mice and Men, The Great Gatsby, Catcher in the Rye. A book that I grew up with, Catcher in the Rye, and
Holden Caulfield, right?
Beloved, right? Beloved by Toni Morrison, an award winner. These are books that have been banned in various libraries around the country. A very interesting story is there is an author, her last name is Gay, and she put out a book. Didn't say anything about gay in the title, but in one of our southern states, she found her book was banned because gay was in the title.
That reminds me of the story of a high school classmate of mine. His name was Martin Gay. At one reunion, I asked him, I said, Martin, he said, is it difficult living with the last name Gay? And he said how he was harassed, how people would call and harass him just because of his last name. Nothing to do with gay lifestyle or anything, just because of that last name Gay. Now, here's the thing. And I'm going to quote Eric Fromm here. He said, the amount of destructiveness to be found in individuals is proportionate to the amount which expressiveness is curtailed. And so you talked earlier about this being a threat to our civil society. I mean, it is, because it's destructive. And it's destructive because they don't want people to be exposed to ideas and writing, good writing, that helps a civil democracy thrive.
And here's a quote that I picked up somewhere when I was researching this. Banning knowledge. Censorship is banning knowledge, culture, empathy, understanding, and diverse and differing worldviews. And the fact of the matter is, what is not right for you or your children to read is not necessarily right or wrong for other people's children to read. So if you want to stop publication of a particular book, well, That's fine for your family. Just don't impose it on my family. Don't impose it on other families. And that's one of the big problems here. These groups are attending school board meetings. They're running for school boards. They're harassing members of school boards. They're harassing teachers. They're harassing librarians beyond belief with demands. And in one case, there's a woman who was questioned at a meeting about what the book was about. She hadn't read it. She had been given a list.
Well, there's a lot of ignorance in this group, but now here's one of the things. I'm on the Supreme Court. I'm familiar with the law. And one of the things that those who promote banning books through school board resolutions, legislation, they thrive on vagueness. I saw recently the governor of Iowa went on, and she's bragging about the law they passed that says books that depict sexual activity should be banned. Now, what is sexual activity? Is it two people kissing? Is it two people holding hands? Is it a woman in the Muslim community not wearing a face, okay? And see, it's a different interpretation. But the problem with that vagueness, and they know what they're doing on this, because they know if they write the legislation, the rules, vague, because of harassment, librarians, whatever, will lean to the ban more as opposed to less, because they don't want to deal with the conflict that will come. So the result of these vague laws is you get the banning of broad-based and good literature, and that's dangerous.
And it also clogs up the courts.
Oh, yeah.
Because they go to court, and then they can't be sustained, so the court has to throw them out, and then there's an appeal, and they go to another court, and that court says, well, this is so vague that we can't sustain it, and it costs money, it costs time, it takes people and makes people really enemies of friends and other people. And you know, my new book back there, A Reluctant Madonna, has two lesbians who are in it. It has actually a threesome at one point in it with three people.
You write about that stuff, Alan? At your age?
I read about it, and so I write about it. You know, I guess I would be on the list for people, but it's a wholesome book. And it's a continuation of my first book, Holding Court, which you're familiar with, about the Supreme Court. Do we want to ban books like that?
Not necessarily.
Do we want to keep people from really enjoying literature? And there's so many intelligent things in the book.
Now, there are some things that you do want to restrict access to. There's some stuff that, and of course, I would start with violence. I mean, we are becoming a very violent society. And I think guns are part of becoming violent. You just see in today's paper the article about, I mean, reasonable people say how scary a pistol can become with this attachment that makes it a
machine gun.
Become a machine gun. And so is that there are some things that you know, maybe we restrict access to. Violence is very dangerous, and we should. And then, but you know, you talked about Mark Twain, and he was kind of an irreverent person. But this is what he said, and I'll quote him. He said, "A discriminating irreverence is the protector and foundation for liberty." And see what he says, a discriminating irreverence. And we have to be very discriminating. And if we err on the side of being more open than closed. But that is what is the protector of our liberal and it's not liberal in the sense politically, but liberal thinking, open-minded civil society.
It's what this nation was founded on. And when we take things away from really what the forefathers envisioned, we are taking away from our liberty, we are taking away, in many cases, from justice. And we find this, for instance, with the, where is it here? I have some statistics down here about the LGBTQ community. They are targeted much more, as are non-white authors, as are African Americans, than are Caucasian authors. Why? Because people are afraid.
I'm going back to what my mother told me about pointing the finger. And when these people are so strident and concerned about these things, it makes me immediately question about their background. Where they come from? What are they afraid of? They experience the thing that they're concerned about. And so, yes, it's, and I'm going to tell you something about that worries me, okay? There's a targeting of the gay, lesbian community. But in many ways, I see this as a harbinger of the next wave. And you see it in various places, the Southern Baptist Conference, others. They're going to go against women. Now, not all women. They're going to go against women who they see as uppity, and strong women who get into politics and are on the more progressive side that want to move society. They'll go against black women. And
well, you can see that really with the attacks from our former president on a judge and a district attorney who he's been vitriolic about.
Oh, yeah.
Both of whom are black women, respected, intelligent, and brilliant black women.
Well, thank God they're there, because they're about holding him accountable. And but they're going after him, okay. I have seen any number of criminal cases. I've had them on appeal, and one of the things that I see, that people who are guilty often of a crime, they can't, the evidence is pretty strong against them, so they go against the institution. They go against people who populate the institution. They attack the FBI. They attack the county attorney. They attack the prosecutor because they want to divert from their wrongdoing. They don't want to be held accountable, and so they go after the individual. And I see some of that happening with the whole book banning thing and going against books that are coming from a particular point of view. And it scares me because, now I don't want to paint too broad a brush, okay? Is that because there are people who are well-intended and are concerned, who are drawn into this movement. I'm trying to think, and I don't know who the one who made the quote is that
unfortunately, most people are followers, and sometimes they get drawn in. A typical situation is the reaction in colleges to the invasion and the attack on Israel and the response.
Oh, yeah.
And so many people now, hundreds, are backing away from their original repudiation statements because people are followers and they can be misled. And
I'm trying to remember who did this quote, and it's probably going to be a paraphrase than an exact quote, but it said, "Save me from, protect me from the tyrant who is capable of exciting my passions such that I do wrong in the name of good." See, and this is what you do. You have the tyrants out there that excite people, appeal to their passions, and then get them to do things that they normally wouldn't do.
And, you know, the attacks on same-sex marriage, for instance, in the last several years, I thought that it was accepted by now. We have attacks on people of two races marrying. I thought that that was accepted now. And it really shocks me to see us going back into the Middle Ages in that regard.
Now you touch a sensitive spot with me. I'm a product of the late 50s and the 60s. Very idealistic, and I'm a Republican, no question, but idealistic about where we're going as a society. And I thought that we had made definite progress, and that we had, as you say, we had moved beyond these third rail type issues. And it's very distressing for me at this stage of life to see that that is not true, that some of those same battles are now having to be fought. Now, okay, growing up, you know, I had probably you know, at best an ambivalent, maybe a negative attitude to somebody who was gay. But as the process of my life goes on, I became to understand more. But I'm going to lead to a point.
You found out that these people are people just
Yes.
like you are.
And I remember doing a gay marriage, okay? And those two men were standing in front of me. And if you told me when I was, you know, beginning as a lawyer in the 70s I'd be doing a gay marriage, I would have been surprised. But I remember doing the ceremony and looking at them, and I said, who? They were so much in love with each other and affectionate for each other and wanted to support each other. And I said to myself, who in their right mind would want to deny these people this satisfaction in life? And so, but I'm going to tell you another thing.
And if people could only see them and really become friends with them or socialize with them, they would see that these are just people.
But now you pick on a point. For almost 2 decades, I served on the Supreme Court with one of the finest people you would ever want to meet. His name is Alan Page, okay? Now, he's African American. I'm white. We became very close. But the experience of sitting across the table from such a good, intelligent, learned, and committed person, I mean, I just, how could I be discriminatory when in fact I admire him so much?
He's been a guest on Access to Democracy.
Yeah, I got to get him back. You know, I interviewed him.
We do have to get him back. That was a great interview. And we have to be proud of, for instance, the people, Chaska in Carver County, who refused to ban the book Genderqueer. Genderqueer was the most banned book in the country last year. And some young students got up and really spoke in front of the school board. I think, it was the town board. And they refused to ban that book. But books are being banned most from Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Pennsylvania. And look at the states where most of the bannings are coming.
You just threw out a message of hope. Because Carver County is traditionally one of our most conservative counties. I remember that from the Coleman-Franken race and the recount. But that county is doing that. Now, I want, before we run out of time, I want to put in another quote. William Allen White, the great Kansas editor who was much honored. And this is what he wrote about. You can have neither wise laws nor free enforcement of wise laws unless there is free expression of the wisdom of the people, and alas, their folly with it. But if there is freedom, folly will die of its own poisonous, and wisdom will survive. That's the point of having a free society and the ability, because bad ideas, once they're exposed, will wither and die, literally on the floor in front of us.
And it's not just books, but we see people trying to revise history.
Oh, yes.
To twist it around to their tortured beliefs. And it really, really is so damaging to us. The fact of the matter is, if we keep these things from our children, they're going to find out about it anyway. And better they find out about it from literature and intelligence than they do from the schoolyard.
Now let me touch another third rail here about revision of history, okay? It's sensitive because, I mean, I believe, I support the taking down of these statutes of Confederates who were rebels and whatever, but we have to be careful to what extent we do that and to what extent we try to revise our history, because there's a lot in our history as a country that we're not necessarily that proud of, but there's some of that that has to be talked about and expressed and people, so that we
can grow from really our mistakes of the past. But if we just take them and plow them under, we're defeating everything that we're all about, and we already.
Yeah, but I'm going to quote Mark Twain again.
Here.
He says, some people say that history repeats itself. He says, I don't agree with it, but sometimes it rhymes. And some of the bad things in history, we got to prevent the present and the future from rhyming with some of the bad things in our past. And that's why we have to have free expression and exposure to many ideas.
Honorable Paul Anderson, always in education, always a pleasure, always right to the point. You've been watching Writer's Corner, a new venture. I hope you enjoyed this, and please don't get on the bandwagon.
The bandwagon. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you.
I got